They called me a gold digger when I married him, said I didn't deserve his money or his world. But honey, if they only knew what I discovered in his private office that night, they'd realize he's the one who didn't deserve me. This is my story. Before we dive into this wild ride, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because this story will have you questioning everything you think you know about love, betrayal, and justice. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single twist. My name is Candace Thompson, and I married a monster, but I didn't know it at the time. 3 years ago, I thought I was living every woman's dream. Today, I know I survived every woman's nightmare. It all started when I was at the top of my game. I was the youngest VP at Preston Marketing in Chicago, pulling in 7 figures, driving my dream Tesla, and living in a penthouse that overlooked the lake. I'd worked my behind off to get there, and I was proud of every sacrifice I'd made. Then I met Robert Sterling at a tech summit in Vegas, and everything changed forever. Robert wasn't just any businessman. This man owned $3 billion companies and had politicians on speed dial. When he walked into that conference room, conversations stopped. But what caught my attention wasn't his power or his perfectly tailored suit. It was how he listened when I presented my marketing strategy. Really listened. Like every word coming out of my mouth was pure gold. After my presentation, he approached me with this genuine smile. "That was incredible," he said, and I could feel the sincerity in his voice. "I've been searching for someone who understands both innovation and human psychology. Have dinner with me tonight, and let's talk about changing the world together." Girl, I should have run. But when a billionaire looks at you like you're the smartest person in the room and wants to pick your brain about business, you don't say no, especially when you're a Black woman who's spent her whole career proving she belongs in rooms full of men who look nothing like her. That first dinner lasted until 3 in the morning. We talked about everything: business strategies, childhood dreams, our plans for disrupting entire industries. Robert shared stories about building his empire from nothing. And I told him about growing up in Detroit with a single mother who cleaned offices so I could have better. When he walked me to my hotel, he didn't try anything. Just asked if he could see me again. And something in his eyes made me say yes. The next 6 months were straight out of a romance novel. Robert would fly to Chicago just to take me to lunch, send flowers with notes about conversations we'd had weeks earlier, and champion my career like no man ever had. When I closed the biggest deal in my company's history, he rented out an entire restaurant to celebrate my success. He spent the whole night bragging to strangers about how brilliant his girlfriend was. When he proposed on his private yacht in the Caribbean, with a ring that cost more than most people's houses, I didn't even think twice. I was head over heels for a man who seemed to worship my mind, respect my ambitions, and love every part of who I was. My girls were screaming with excitement. My mama cried happy tears, and I felt like I'd won the lottery of love. The wedding was everything I'd ever dreamed of, except for one thing that should have been a red flag. As I floated down that aisle in my $15,000 dress, I couldn't ignore the ice-cold stares from Robert's side. His business partners, his family, his so-called friends, they all looked at me like I was some kind of imposter who'd snuck into their exclusive club. I heard the whispers, "Gold digger. She's just using him. This won't last 6 months." But when Robert took my hands and promised to love and protect me forever, I pushed those voices out of my head. We knew our truth, and that was all that mattered. For the first few months of marriage, I clung to that belief like my life depended on it. We lived in his mansion that was bigger than the apartment building I grew up in, and I kept crushing it at work. We'd have romantic dinners, take weekend trips to his cabin in Aspen, and I genuinely believed we were building something beautiful together. But then Robert started changing, slowly at first, like a dimmer switch being turned down, bit by bit. It began at social events. My husband, who used to introduce me as his brilliant wife and brag about my latest business wins, started introducing me as just my wife Candace. When people asked about my work, he'd cut me off with comments like, "She's taking a break from the corporate grind," or "She's learning to enjoy the finer things now." This confused the hell out of me because I was still working 60-hour weeks and loving every minute of it. Then came the jokes that cut like knives. At a charity auction for children's literacy, something I was passionate about, I was deep in conversation with a nonprofit director about innovative fundraising strategies when Robert slid up beside me. "Don't mind Candace," he said, with that charming smile that made everyone love him. "She likes to play CEO, but tonight she's just here to look pretty and spend my money." The director laughed uncomfortably and excused herself, leaving me standing there feeling about 2 inches tall. When I confronted him about it later, he just shrugged. "Baby, you're being too sensitive. It was just a joke. You know I think the world of you." But the jokes kept coming, each one slicing a little deeper into my confidence. The real earthquake hit when I lost my job. I'd been at Preston Marketing for 7 years, just landed our biggest client ever, and my boss was talking about making me partner. Then suddenly, I got called into HR on a random Thursday and told my position was being restructured. No warning, no severance, just a box for my desk and security walking me to the elevator. I was devastated. This job wasn't just a paycheck, it was my identity, my proof that I belonged in Robert's world because of what I'd accomplished, not who I'd married. When I came home crying, Robert was surprisingly quick to comfort me. "Maybe this is a blessing," he said, holding me close. "Now you can focus on us, on being my wife. You don't need to stress about work when I can take care of everything." At first, his words felt like a warm blanket. I was hurt and vulnerable, and the idea of not worrying about corporate politics while I figured out my next move seemed appealing. Robert brought me breakfast in bed, told me how gorgeous I looked, even when I was in sweatpants, at 2 in the afternoon, and made me feel cherished. But weeks turned into months, and something felt wrong. Every job I applied for seemed to evaporate into thin air. Companies that had tried to headhunt me before suddenly weren't returning calls. When I'd bring up wanting to work again, Robert would say things like, "Why do you need a job when you have everything here?" Or, "Most women would kill to be in your position." The isolation crept in like fog. My work friends stopped inviting me to industry events. My family started saying I'd changed since the wedding, though I couldn't see how. Robert's friends still treated me like I didn't belong, and now my own circle was slipping away too. Meanwhile, Robert's public treatment of me got worse. At his company's holiday party, he introduced me to investors by saying, "This is my wife. She used to think she was some hotshot executive, but now she's learning what it really means to be a sterling." Everyone laughed while I died, a little inside. Another time, at dinner with his college buddies, someone asked what I was up to. Before I could speak, Robert jumped in. "Candace keeps busy shopping and redecorating. You know how women are. Give them a black card, and they're happy as clams." I wanted to scream that I'd been writing business proposals all week, that I was anything but the shallow stereotype he was painting. But his hand was on my back, pressing just hard enough to keep me quiet. Everything changed 8 months after I lost my job. Robert was in New York on business, and I was home alone in that big, empty house. I went to his office, looking for a phone charger. His office was normally off limits, but I figured he wouldn't mind me grabbing something simple. While digging through his desk, my hand hit some kind of switch that opened a hidden compartment I never knew existed. Inside were encrypted hard drives and a folder marked Operation Cleanup. My heart started pounding, but curiosity won over caution. What I found in that folder destroyed my entire world and rebuilt it in the same moment. Robert hadn't just married me, he'd hunted me. The folder contained detailed files on dozens of successful Black women in business, their photos, their accomplishments, their weaknesses, and step-by-step plans for destroying their careers. My name was at the top of the list, with a thick file documenting everything from my childhood in Detroit to my daily routines. I found emails between Robert and my former boss, dated 2 weeks before I was fired. Robert had threatened to pull his company's massive advertising contract unless they got rid of me immediately. He'd provided fake performance reports and planted seeds about my attitude problems and unreliability. My termination wasn't bad luck, it was a carefully orchestrated hit job. But it got so much worse. As I scrolled deeper, I found recordings, secret audio files of private conversations we'd had in our bedroom, phone calls with my mother, even girls' nights when my friends came over and we thought we were alone. He'd been recording everything, editing the files to make me sound unstable, money-hungry, and manipulative. The most chilling discovery was his divorce timeline. Robert planned to use these doctored recordings to have me declared mentally unfit and potentially committed. This would let him divorce me without paying a dime, while playing the victim of a crazy gold digger. According to his notes, he was planning to start the process in 3 weeks. As I sat in that office, surrounded by evidence of my husband's calculated evil, I felt like I was drowning. Every "I love you," every romantic gesture, every moment of intimacy had been a lie. I wasn't his wife. I was his most elaborate project, the successful Black woman who'd gotten too close to his world and needed to be completely destroyed. But then something shifted inside me. The drowning feeling transformed into something fierce and unstoppable. Robert thought he was dealing with a broken, isolated woman with no resources. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I spent the entire night copying every file, photographing every document, and memorizing every detail of his operation. By morning, I had enough evidence to bring down not just Robert, but everyone who'd helped him destroy lives. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed when he came home. He walked in with roses and apologies for being away, kissing me like the loving husband he'd never been. "Missed you, beautiful," he said, and I had to fight every instinct not to throw up. Instead, I smiled and told him I'd missed him too. I cooked his favorite meal, asked about his trip, and played the devoted wife while planning his complete destruction. If Robert wanted to play chess, I was about to show him what a grandmaster looked like. Over the next month, I quietly reached out to other women in his files. It wasn't easy. These women were traumatized, their careers destroyed, and they had every reason not to trust the wife of their tormentor. But one by one, I convinced them to share their stories. The pattern was identical every time. Successful Black women who'd suddenly lost jobs, missed promotions, or had their reputations destroyed by mysterious rumors. They'd all suspected something was wrong, but none could prove it. Until now, I connected with a civil rights lawyer who specialized in conspiracy cases and an FBI agent who handled corporate crime. Both were skeptical until they saw Robert's files. Then everything changed. We had him dead to rights, but we needed to catch him in the act to make the charges stick. Robert was in the middle of his biggest business deal ever, acquiring a tech company that would make him even more powerful. I convinced him to let me host a dinner party for the deal's key players. He was surprised, but pleased that I wanted to contribute to his success. The man destroying my life actually complimented me on finally becoming a proper wife. The night of the dinner, I wore the elegant black dress he'd picked out for me and played the perfect hostess. What he didn't know was that I was wearing a wire. Every word, every casual admission about restructuring the industry was being recorded. As the wine flowed, Robert got comfortable and started bragging. When someone mentioned the recent exodus of Black professionals from their companies, Robert actually laughed. "It's just business," he said. "Sometimes you have to make tough choices about who fits your company culture. We're not running a charity, we're building the future." I pushed him further, playing the curious wife. "But don't you think diversity brings value?" His answer sealed his fate. "Candace, honey, you're sweet, but you don't understand how real business works. Diversity is fine in small doses, but when you're building something important, you need people you can trust, people who understand the game." He looked around the table at his conspirators, all nodding in agreement. We're not here to make everyone feel included. We're here to win. We had everything we needed. The next week moved like lightning. The FBI got search warrants for Robert's offices and computers. The lawyer filed a massive class action suit. I worked with a journalist to prepare an exposé that would run in major newspapers simultaneously. Robert had no idea what was coming. On the morning his business deal was supposed to close, Robert woke up to FBI agents at our door. I watched from the stairs as they told him he was under investigation for conspiracy, civil rights violations, and fraud. The color drained from his face as they explained they were seizing his computers and business records. "This is insane," he kept saying, looking at me with panic in his eyes. "Candace, tell them this is crazy. You know me. You know I would never—" But I said nothing. I just watched the man who'd tried to destroy me finally face justice. By afternoon, the story was everywhere. Billionaire accused of systematic racism conspiracy. The Sterling scandal, how one man destroyed black careers. Inside Operation Cleanup, the secret war on diversity. Robert's business partners abandoned him. His board suspended him. His precious deal collapsed as investors fled. Everything he'd built came crashing down in a single day. When he came home on bail, I was packing my bags. The house that had been my prison was now just a place I was choosing to leave. "You don't understand what you've done," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You've destroyed everything I worked for. Over what? A misunderstanding." I looked at this pathetic man who'd pretended to love me while plotting my destruction. "Robert, I didn't destroy anything. I just exposed what was already there. The only question is, did you ever actually love me, or was I always just another target?" His silence was my answer. Today, 2 years later, Robert Sterling is in federal prison. His companies paid millions to the women he targeted. Those women have rebuilt their careers, many more successful than ever. As for me, I started my own firm, helping people fight workplace discrimination. Business is booming, and I wake up every day knowing I'm using my experience to protect others. The mansion is gone, sold for legal fees. The designer clothes, the jewelry, all the things people thought I married him for, I gave most of it away. Turns out, what I really gained from that marriage wasn't wealth. It was the knowledge of my own power. People still whisper when I walk into rooms. But now they don't call me a gold digger. They call me the woman who brought down Robert Sterling. And honestly, I'll take that reputation every single day. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes, the person trying hardest to convince the world you don't belong is the one who knows exactly how powerful you really are. Robert saw my potential from day one. That's why he worked so hard to destroy it. He failed, and every successful day I have, every client I help, every young woman I mentor, all of it proves his worldview was not just wrong, but powerless against truth and determination. They called me a gold digger. Turns out, I was digging for something much more valuable than gold. I was digging for justice, and honey, I struck the mother lode. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your engagement helps stories like mine reach people who might be facing similar situations. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought. Did you see the twist coming? And remember, sometimes the person trying hardest to tear you down is the one with the most to hide. Subscribe for more incredible stories of courage and justice, and I'll see you in the next one.